Greetings and welcome to part 1 of chapter 5, Theories of Motivation. I'm going to start by talking about the big picture. This wonderful quote from Phil Jackson, pretty well-known MBA coach. He said, "You cannot motivate someone. All you can do is provide a motivating environment, and the players will motivate themselves." The implication of this is that the manager's task is to create the conditions under which followers might choose to motivate themselves. Let me be very clear what's happening here. What Phil is saying, what I'm saying, is that none of us controls anyone else. No one. They choose themselves whether to be motivated, whether to work hard, whether to continue working on something. That's entirely up to that other person. Oh, sometimes employees might do what we want, but it will be because they have chosen to do so. This will become more clear as we work our way through this motivation material. I'm going to start by talking about performance. Why are we talking about performance in a motivation chapter? Well, one of the main reasons that we study motivation, one of the reasons that it is one of the most studied topics in organizational behavior, is because it relates to performance. Specifically, performance is a function of motivation times ability times environment. Notice that we're talking about a multiplicative relationship, not an additive relationship, such that each of these elements must be present in some positive form in order for performance to happen. If any of them is missing, if any of them is at zero, well, what happens to performance? It disappears. What do we mean by motivation? Well, it's the desire to achieve a goal or a certain performance level leading to goal-directed behavior. Another word that we might use in place of motivation is effort. And when we talk about effort, there are 3 elements: direction, intensity, and persistence. Direction helps us to understand that effort is a choice. We choose to direct our attention, our effort toward one or another things, as opposed to all the other things that we could have chosen. Intensity is how hard we're willing to work, how much effort we're willing to put in. And persistence is for how long are we willing to work. So direction is what thing are we going to work on? Intensity is how hard are we going to work on it? And persistence is for how long are we going to work on it? The other 2 pieces of performance are ability and environment. Ability is simply the skills and knowledge required to perform the job or the task. An environment comprises all the resources, the information, and the support that a person needs to perform that job or that task well. Notice how important this is. This is just as important as ability and motivation. Without the proper resources, without the information we need, and without the support we need, we shouldn't be surprised if we don't perform particularly well. Think about this whole transition to online learning. Think about how motivated you are. Think about the skills and knowledge that you have, the ability, and then think about the environment. Do you have the resources you need? Do you have high-speed internet, for example? Do you have the privacy you need in order to do your assignments and take your exams, listen to these narrated PowerPoints? Are you getting the information that you require? Is the text readable? Is the professor understandable in this environment? And then support, not only from your profs, but also perhaps from the school's writing center or academic support. And then, of course, the people with whom you're living. Do they understand, for example, just how challenging this online learning stuff is? And are they giving you the support that you need in order to perform at a high level? Now I'm going to talk about what I call the basic model of motivation. This is not something in the text, so you'll want to make sure that it makes sense to you. And if it doesn't, don't hesitate to talk to me about it. You're going to be drawing this model. You will want to have, if you haven't already printed out the lecture outline, no worries, get some other piece of paper and be prepared to draw on this paper. Don't worry, this is not drawing anything fancy. We're doing a flow chart. All right, so you've got what you need. Great. All motivation starts with an unsatisfied need. Let's take a simple example. You're hungry. When you're hungry, you feel tension. Maybe your tummy makes noise, right? You have a hard time concentrating. You start to daydream. All you can think about is food, perhaps. It's difficult to focus, right? So we set a goal. I'm going to get something to eat. I'm going to go into that kitchen. I'm going to hit up that pantry. I'm going to get something. I'm going to take care of the fact that I'm hungry. So you go into the kitchen. You go to the pantry or the refrigerator, whatever, wherever the food is. If your goal is achieved, let's say you decide, I'm going to make myself a sandwich. All the fixings to make your favorite kind of sandwich are there in the kitchen. And so voila, you're no longer hungry. Now you move on to the next unsatisfied need. Glory. Let's imagine another scenario. You go to the kitchen, gonna make yourself a sandwich, and there's no bread, or whatever filling you most love is all gone. Maybe you're a PB&J person. Maybe you're a grilled cheese kind of person. Whatever you need, it's not there. Dang, now what? You're going to be frustrated. Oh, come on, man. I just wanted to have a sandwich. Option A, you engage in constructive behavior. You're frustrated. You're unhappy. You were really looking forward maybe to that grilled cheese again or whatever it was. You can't have one of those. So, well, what else is there? Well, I could have the soup. I guess soup would be okay. So you make yourself some soup. Glory! All is well. And again, you're going to move back up to another unsatisfied need. But what if, instead of choosing constructive behavior, you decide to engage in destructive behavior? Well, what does that look like? Well, there's a few options. Withdrawal, aggression, regression. With this example, let me just focus on aggression. Aggression. You're mad. You're angry. You just wanted a grilled cheese, and you were sure the ingredients were there yesterday. What happened? Where did all the bread go? Where did all the cheese go? What on earth is happening? So you start shouting at the other people with whom you live. You are angry. Another option would be to engage in regression. Regression is childlike behavior. So you throw a fit. You pout. You whine. You basically act like a toddler who's in a store who wants something and they're told no. So you lose your mind. Okay? All right. Hopefully that example makes sense. Let's work through this model with another example. Instead of being hungry, let's go into the workplace and let's say that your unsatisfied need is for feedback on how you're doing. You've been at your job for less than 6 months. You haven't yet gone through a formal performance appraisal. You'd like to know how you're doing. And your boss hasn't really given you any indication. I had a job like this once where I actually went for a whole year without knowing what my boss thought about my work. It drove me nuts. You feel tension. You have this need. I'd like some feedback on how I'm doing. Now, why might a person want that feedback? Well, as we'll discuss later in part 2 for this chapter, lots of us like feedback on how we're doing. That helps us to know whether we need to make course corrections, whether we need to change up what we're doing. So without that feedback, we feel tension. We decide to engage in some goal-directed behavior. I will ask my boss for a meeting. And as part of that meeting, I will ask the boss nicely, diplomatically, respectfully for some feedback. Awesome. I have the meeting with the boss. I explain. I'm the kind of person who really benefits from hearing how I'm doing. That allows me to change things up if needed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The boss says, oh, well, I'm happy to provide you with some feedback, and proceeds to do so. And it's very helpful. So the goal is achieved. How fantastic. And we move on to our next unsatisfied need. Let's say instead of our goal being achieved, however, it wasn't. Uh-oh. Maybe we had our meeting with the boss, and the boss said, you're going to have to wait just like everybody else for your annual performance appraisal. That's just the way I do things. I don't provide any more feedback until we have that formal opportunity for me to do so. Wow. That's going to leave you feeling pretty frustrated, pretty unhappy, especially if you're the kind of person who really needs that feedback in order to continue feeling motivated. What are your options? Option A, you could engage in some other constructive behavior. Perhaps you decide, okay, well, the boss doesn't want to give me feedback. I wonder, maybe I can get feedback from some of my coworkers. I can ask them, the folks who are more seasoned, how do they think I'm doing? Are there some things that they think I could be working on, that I could be doing different, better? That would be useful. So you would do that. That would be constructive, positive behavior. Wonderful. Of course, not everybody thinks about behaving constructively. Some people might decide they prefer option B, destructive or negative behavior. We go back to our options, and here I'll give you some examples of withdrawal. In the work setting, good examples of withdrawal include working less hard, so exerting less effort, showing up late, leaving early, taking longer breaks, basically withdrawing our efforts, our inputs, pulling ourselves away, not offering as much. The second option, aggression. Maybe we lash out at that boss, or we lash out at our coworkers, or we take our aggression home and we displace that aggression intended for our boss, and we direct it at the people we love at home. Or maybe we engage in regression, again, childlike behavior, maybe in the form of gossip, maybe in the form of spending more time on our phones, or doing personal texting and so on, pouting, basically, whining, again, childlike behaviors. Now, the real value of this model isn't so much working from the beginning as I did with the unsatisfied need and working our way around, but rather observing if we were to start at the end with withdrawal, aggression, regression. And we know that we've seen these behaviors in the workplace. And understanding when we see those behaviors, why those exist. These don't exist because people have a bad personality. These don't exist because people are lazy. These exist because people have been frustrated, dissatisfied. Some goal they were trying to achieve wasn't. That goal related to an unsatisfied need that they had. So when we see these kinds of behaviors in the workplace, you're a manager and you see these things, what you should be asking yourself is, why is this person frustrated? What goal was this person not able to achieve? Did I have some role as the boss in that person not being able to achieve their goal? The goal that related to some unsatisfied need that that person has. What is that need? And is there anything that I or the company can do about it? That's the proper way to use the model. Again, to look at this negative set of outcomes, and when we observe it, to think to ourselves, what is the cause of that? And how might I be able to, in fact, address the unsatisfied need that's driving all of that? This takes us rather smoothly into the next topic, which is theory X versus theory Y. As it says here, when trying to understand what motivates other people, we need to consider the assumptions that we make about those other people. McGregor, back in 1960, argued that managers tend to hold two different basic assumptions or sets of assumptions about motivation. One set, theory X. Here, people assume that employees really do not want to work hard at all because they're lazy, because they dislike responsibility. And the other set, theory Y, here managers assume that employees actually want to do a good job, that they're intrinsically motivated, and they want more responsibility. Again, we're not talking about what actually motivates employees. We're talking about what does the manager assume motivates those employees. So this isn't factually based. This is instead, you're a manager, you assume that people are naturally lazy, that basically you got to kick them into high gear in order for them to be productive. Or you tend to assume that when people come to work, they want to do a good job. And if they aren't, maybe that's because you're not helping them to do a good job. That's that, remember that environment piece of performance? They may in fact be highly motivated. They may be very skilled. What's missing then might be the resources, the information, the support that they need. Okay, so theory Y versus theory X. You have to ask yourself, to which set of assumptions do you subscribe? Do you generally believe that people are lazy? Well, then you're making theory X assumptions about people. Or do you generally assume that people want to do a good job? Then you're making theory Y assumptions. Why does this matter? Well, it matters because of this phenomenon called a self-fulfilling prophecy. Here's how it works. If you assume that people are just lazy, another word might be indolent, that basically as a boss, you got to be constantly on these people's backs in order for them to get anything done. Well, people are very smart. It's got nothing to do with their degrees or anything like that, or IQ tests. People are able to see, to understand what's going on with a boss. And they know when they're being treated like they're idiots. They know when they're being treated like they're children. And guess what? When people are treated like that, that's how they behave. Are you with me? If you treat someone like that person is a child, that's how that person is going to respond to you. Because they'll figure, why should I behave like myself? Why should I behave like an adult? You don't respect me anyway. You're not going to treat me as though I have a brain anyway. So why should I bother? Why should I work hard for you when you're going to treat me like garbage no matter what I do? Hence, the manager who makes theory X assumptions treats employees poorly and gets in exchange poor performance. It's a tidy, self-fulfilling prophecy. Good news, it works the other way as well. When we make theory Y assumptions about people, when we assume that they want to work hard, Well, again, that influences how we treat them. We treat them with respect. We treat them as equals. We treat them as colleagues. We make sure they have the resources they need in order to do a great job. And guess what? Again, people are smart. They can tell when a boss actually cares. They can tell when a boss respects them. And if they feel respected, well, they're going to want to give that right back. So more often than not, they're going to work hard. They're going to do their best. Now, this is not always true, of course. But more often than not, it will be. And once again, we have a self-fulfilling prophecy. Hence, my advice to you is simple. Train yourself to make theory Y assumptions about people. Assume the best in people. I mean, sometimes you'll still have people who don't deliver on that promise, on that set of assumptions. But more often than not, you'll discover that, in fact, people will live up or down to your expectations, your hopes, your assumptions. So assume that they want to do good work, treat them as though they want to do good work, respect them, care about them, and guess what? They'll work hard for you, and they'll do a terrific job. And that brings us to the end of part 1 of chapter 5.